We are back live. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thank you very much. Glad to be back live again. And we were at the agenda changes and deletions, and I don't believe there are any. We'll be proceeding with tonight's agenda as listed. And then we'll move to the results of the report out of our closed session. And I'd like to introduce our Assistant City Attorney, Jordan Green, to provide a report from that.
Good evening. In closed session, the council unanimously approved a settlement agreement in Charles S. Sires versus City of Petaluma et al., Sonoma County Superior Court Case Number SCV 271500. The city clerk's office will have a copy of the agreement once it's fully executed, and it is a public document, so members of the public may request a copy. I will just provide a short summary of the agreement as it will be available to everyone soon. The parties agreed to pay their own attorney's fees. There was no agreement to an exchange of money, and Sires agreed to dismiss the lawsuit. The city also acknowledged that under the current provisions of the city's municipal code and zoning ordinance, that Sires may make certain modifications to existing buildings and storefronts without being subject to the site plan and architectural review process or other discretionary review, but only certain circumstances, all of which is already in the city zoning code and city's municipal ordinance. There is no intent to impose any limitation on the city's review and permitting authority. Whether the city and Sires entered into this agreement just to declare what is already existing law and to make sure everyone's on the same page. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the report. And we'll move on to general public comment. And at this time, during general public comment, the public is invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction and that are not listed on the current agenda. Public comments are limited up to 3 minutes in person. Depending on the number of persons wishing to address the council, time may be allocated in equal shares, totaling no more than 20 minutes. And let's see. So, Clerk, do we have any public comment in from the outside posted to the web?
Mr. Mayor, we did receive one public comment prior to the meeting, which is posted online with the agenda packet.
And may we offer the Zoom audience a chance to participate?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I will start a 30-second clock for general public comment. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Members of the public attending online should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments, that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. At this point, there are 3 speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. And I have 2 cards right here. So I think that the time for tonight will be a 3-minute timer for tonight.
Yes, that is correct.
And let's start with the in-council. And our first speaker tonight will be Catherine Barbowski.
Yes, my name is Catherine Mabrowski. I live at the Littlewoods Mobile Villa Mobile Home Park at 1821 Lakeville Highway Space 31. My neighbor has been telling his stalker friends be parked illegally against my mobile home at 31, right there. And the Petaluma Police Department is illegally allowing the manager's family to be illegally parked in the red zone on Perry Lane, day and night. And also, she's been having her other family members at space 11 to be parking illegally on the fire lane at night, 24 hours a day. And yesterday, my neighbor had his friend, stalker friends, his drug dealer friends, at space 14, parking against my mobile home with license plate HA49014, parked illegal against my mobile home at 31. And he had his other his drug dealer friend named Donna, I don't know her last name, come to my mobile home at Space 31, physically assaulted me. Says, give me your phone. I'm going to grab your phone from you. And I called the Penal Police Department. They came out. They said, oh, no, she could do that. We're not going to arrest her because they don't want to arrest their friend. The police department don't want to arrest their friends because they're friends with these drug dealers at 14 and the manager was her family and her friends. I'm asking you, get the police out there, start making arrests on these people. Stop allowing them to be doing terrorism, parking on the fire lanes, doing assault, and things like that, breaking the law. Please do something. Put a stop to this, because I've already sent the pictures to my attorney, and I already called him up today and told him what happened. The police don't want to do their job. It seems to me that they seem to be corrupt. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Rosemary Hart, followed by Richard Cruz.
Are we ready? Can you hear me? Okay, my name's Rosemary Hart, and we are here representing the Petaluma Women's Club tonight. We'd like to introduce to you our Time to Trestle campaign. The women of the Petaluma Women's Club and another 400 plus of your constituents who signed a petition all are asking the city to move forward expeditiously on the Trestle Rehabilitation Project. Every single person we've talked to wants to see a beautiful riverfront promenade. We were so happy to see that the Trestle Rehabilitation Project was in our current year's budget, but then we were exasperated to see it was unfunded. Then we were elated the City Council passed the Trestle project as one of its very highest priority projects. But then again, we were devastated to see that it went from fiscal year 23 construction to fiscal year 25 and beyond construction. I want to please remember, have you please remember, this is one project that actually is going to make the city revenue. Ida McNear, the founder of the Petaluma Women's Club, wrote our creed that said to be on the alert to aid our city officials in order to have a safe and well-maintained city. The dangerous trestle that's dilapidated and falling apart, garbage strewn, that's in the heart of our Petaluma now is neither well-maintained nor safe. In the spirit of Ida's creed, the Petaluma Women's Club has asked city staff how we could help to reprioritize this project. The Petaluma Women's Club has now become a community partner with the city of Petaluma, and we're poised to collect donations to help fund this trestle project, to see it through. And we have a donation agreement in with the city that once that's finalized, we can go ahead with donations. However, donors, it turns out, are looking for the city to show a commitment to this project. It's been shelved for over a decade now. They'd like to see some action. Grantors would also like to see a commitment from this city. So what we're asking from you tonight, please, is to show real commitment to the Trestle Rehabilitation Project by dedicating city funds, dedicating staff to complete the project milestones, and also dedicating staff to write grants. This headline could say Trestle.
Thank you, but your time has expired.
Thank you very much. Good night. Time up. And my apology, I announced Richard Cruz as next speaker, but he's asking for different and specific items, so not now. And I'd like to pass it over to the moderator for our Zoom participation.
Thank you. The first speaker that I have is Shakti. Shakti, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Oh, I need to update my iPad name. This is Darren Rackison, but thank you, Aaron. Wait for the timer. Great. We stand on the eve of a pretty robust planning commission meeting tomorrow, the 24th. after what was kind of a drought in planning commissions, just I guess due to project timelines and things of that nature. But it sparked some conversations about discretionary approval and really what's coming down the pike, really what's already arrived in terms of California SBs, California Senate bills that will advocate for more ministerial or streamlined approvals, especially for housing developments, which is great. You know, I think a lot of people know that if there's one type of housing maybe that we need, it is definitely always affordable housing. And I just want to make sure our city, though, still does lean into discretionary review. As much as there is a push to go ministerial, to go streamlined, you know, with objective design standards being in place to make sure that those designs are as good as they can possibly be, they just can't be site specific. And really, I'm quoting, now Mayor McDonald, in saying that, you know, that discretionary process, when our committees and commissions get to review projects before they come through the pipeline, they do always make them better. So I just wanted to advocate for whatever process we can put in place as a city to maintain that discretionary review of projects. I think that's really important. Then I had a great inspiration from the airport committee I got to sit in on, the airport commission meeting. They had a fantastic program going. I want to advocate for really every committee and commission to mirror this. They have kind of a communication and liaison ad hoc committee where folks from the airport commission ad hoc are going around and meeting with council members, city staff, anyone who's tied into the airport, and just opening channels of communication. I was really impressed with how much they got done just by that simple act of dedicating an ad hoc to communicate. And then finally, I do want to bring up a program, in reading some of the minute notes from actually what was our last tree committee meeting. I noticed that some of the public comment wasn't fully getting translated, and I just got tuned into a new program that our city clerk may find valuable. It's called Descript, DESCRIPT, and you can feed in audio and video files to it, and it creates a transcript in real time. There's a documentary filmmaker in Petaluma here that turned me on to that. So I just wanted to see if that might be something useful to city staff, maybe to cut down on some of the labor of taking minutes and notes, but also really to faithfully convey to the word what's being said at city meetings. And I see our public works director, Christopher Bolt, there in the audience. So I just want to advocate for maybe a time too many for a review of the AMI infrastructure to use fiber internet instead of 5G and a permeable surface standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. The next speaker that we have is ZG. ZG, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Zyra, and I actually appreciate that previous public comment. It's actually nice to get a very quick summary of what's going on within our commissions and boards. But anyways, tonight I just wanted to thank specifically Council Member Dennis Postake and Mayor McDonald for attending the anti-Blackness conversation that was hosted by Los Cien. I really do appreciate that Petaluma is taking that at least first initiative step in trying to get more partnerships within our other organizations, especially in order to come back to racism, and not just racism that we know, but also the systemic racism. And hopefully that what you all learned from that conversation and from the speakers and by attending with other people that day is also that it reflects in your policymaking as well as your voting. So again, I just want to thank you again for attending. And if I missed anybody else who attended and I did not name, apologies for that, but I know that Councilmember Dennis Postake and our Mayor our Mayor Kevin McDonald was in the audience. Thank you.
The next speaker that we have is Pedro. Pedro, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, everyone. Pedro here. I'm a resident of Midtown, and I'm calling in to better understand the situation at Cedar Grove Park. I'm a resident of Petaluma for about a year and a half now. And about a year ago, we had a devastating fire that put away one of the historic homes in Petaluma, one of the oldest historic home. And it's my understanding that number of police calls are increasing drastically for the shelterless community at Cedar Grove. And I know it's a complex issue, but as a resident that has a 6-month-old daughter that is seeing the encampment get closer and closer to my home, I'm quite concerned for the safety of my family. I have reached out to the local police. I've reached out to COTS. There seems to be no answer, and leads back to a city issue that we're just looking for stronger leadership to understand what's happening. And as a citizen, I'm willing to support and understand what can be done. There's a coalition of neighbors on Midtown that's gathering around the topic. So it's just trying to get clarity. Earlier today, I took a walk in the river, and there seems to be trash getting to the water of the river. So wondering what the city is doing in terms of keeping the place clean, as well as I know there's a broader perspective of who owns the land, who doesn't own, but at least for the short term, I'm concerned for the safety of my family, and I don't want to see a fire again in my backyard as it happened already within a year.
Thank you for your comments. And Mayor, that is the last public speaker.
Thank you very much then. At this point, we'll move on to council comments. And I'd like to start with our Zoom council member tonight, Council Member Barnacle, to tee us up.
Nothing to report on tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
And coming across the dais, Council Member Healy.
Thank you. So this may be stuff that people are already tracking, but I have been reporting on this fairly regularly. So Lake Sonoma is in much better shape than it was the last time we were here. In mid-December, it was at 96,000 acre-feet of storage, which is the lowest it had been since it was built. As of today, it's at 236,000 acre-feet of storage, which is a remarkable increase. That's way above last year. It's actually above average. It would be full at 245,000 acre feet. Lake Mendocino and Lake Pillsbury have actually been spilling because they're full. So our water supply situation is very different, and I would anticipate that in the fairly near future, we're going to have a carefully calibrated rollback of the drought restrictions. We have to be careful with messaging. I think it would be most accurate to say that this particular drought is off for now, as opposed to the drought is over, because I think we've learned some lessons, and we certainly want to continue with long-term water conservation efforts, including the city's conservation programs and extending Purple Pipe wherever we can, and other things collaboratively throughout the region. But I think at this point we're kind of on the cusp of saying that people don't need to continue taking extraordinary steps over this summer. There will be no debate about whether growing tomatoes is legal or not, which is nice. So anyway, more to come. We have to be careful with the messaging because there are other parts of the state that are not in as good a situation as ours. We're not impacted by the snowpack. We're not impacted by what's going on in Lake Shasta. There's no pipes to get water from there to here anyway. So we're kind of an island from the water world perspective. So I'll leave it at that. I appreciate the trestle advocates coming down tonight. That was one of our top priorities, and I'd like to see movement on that. It is complicated by the fact that we don't own the trestle, and relations between the city and SMART have not been smooth in the past, but we have a new general manager, and hopefully things will be better than they were. So I'm looking forward to that. Another council priority that wasn't mentioned in public comment, but we keep getting letters from residents of the mobile homes, and it's partially a form letter, and I got 2 more in my box here tonight, and I know the rest of the council members did as well. But this is from a resident at Leisure Lake up on Stony Point Road, and I won't read the form letter part of it, but I will read the handwritten part at the bottom because that's what's particularly interesting. It says, "My specific situation. With a 3% annual increase, I'm now paying $2,500 a year more than when I moved in here in 2008. I'm on a fixed income, Social Security. Any increase above 3% is unacceptable. I will be forced to sell and leave. I need a residence to maintain my senior advantage with Kaiser. Also, my home is sinking as there are quite a few homes in here. So, updating our mobile home ordinance was also made a priority. I'd really like to know what the status on this. That is, it's really important that we get that done. Other cities in the county, there are actually very different models on how to do that. We have one particular model in our ordinance. Santa Rosa and Runner Park have a very different ordinance that is in some ways simpler. And then the advocates who represented the homeowners in the arbitration, I believe, was it Sandalwood? Youngstown, okay, had a different thing in mind. So I think before staff comes back with something saying, here, adopt this, we should actually have a discussion about which of these models we think makes the most sense before staff goes off and starts drafting something. But I really hope to see that happen fairly soon. And then I just also wanted to comment on the public speaker who spoke about the homeless situation at Cedar Grove. That's privately owned land, so it's not subject to the Ninth Circuit's Boise decision, as I understand it. And I would be curious to hear from staff if we can get an update tonight on what's going on there. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cater Thompson.
Great. I'll just follow up with Mike on the mobile home park ordinance. I would like to have that brought back to us sooner than later. And I would also like to confirm with the lawyers from Youngstown that worked on that. So, and I have looked at the Santa Rosa model. It would be nice if we could all be more consistent in the county. But I think it's important that we do something sooner than later. And I thought that was going to kind of coincide with the tenants. And so I'm hoping, actually, I'm kind of expecting that to come forward. As far as Pedro, I have been in contact with him, and we talked about possibly the city having at the Kenilworth Rec Center, which is right in their area, maybe a community meeting so we can get the information out so people can ask questions. And there was also another person in the area I've been talking with, and both of them really like the idea of having a community meeting at the Kenilworth Rec Center because it's in their, in their vicinity. And so I'd like to see that happen and have a discussion about when that can happen. And then the other thing is with Zyra Garcia, when she was talking about the Low CN, I unfortunately was out of town, so I couldn't go, but you can watch it on YouTube. So they have a YouTube channel so you can watch what was discussed Friday, because it was about Low CN addressing Latino community's role in anti-Black racism. And I mean, there's definitely racism between groups of people. And I really, unfortunately, missed this, but you can see it on YouTube, and I think it's really important. And I think I probably have more to say, but I'm going to end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Now.
Well, I just spent a week in Sacramento, and I attended the 2023 New Mayors and City Council Members Academy that was presented by the League of California Cities. And the 3 days that I was gone, we covered from 7:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening mandatory items such as ethics and sexual harassment for elected officials. And then we also had seminars on subjects like the Brown Act, budgets, city council meetings, how to have a good city council meeting. They did a parody on a bad city council meeting. It could have been at Saturday Night Live. It was so funny. And we listened to conflict of interest. And I met with the African American Caucus group, and I invited their members to come to our Petaluma Museum because we're having a new exhibit from February 10th to March 26th in celebration of Black History Month, and talking about diversity and racism in all our communities and society. This is a really important exhibit to go see the history of Petaluma and the Blacks in our community, African Americans. I met with Senator Mike McGuire and Assemblyman Don Conley at the after hours networking. So I appreciate the city sending us, and it was really educational. And it was a great refresher course, and I'm happy to be back in Petaluma. So thank you.
Councilmember Pozike.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the first city council, the first youth commission meeting of the new cycle and began some conversations that I'm eager to have with everyone involved in terms of finding a way to increase the benefit to everyone involved in the youth commission. And to anyone, any citizens out there in the audience, I'd be happy to have their ideas and any concerns with respect to the youth commission, because really trying to get us moving on a reevaluation of how to make this beneficial for everyone involved. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Councilmember Shribs.
Good evening. I attended the Climate Action Commission meeting this last week, and the major topic was from the Regional Climate Protection Agency, along with the Climate Action Committee for Region. So on a regional basis, what's happening here in Petaluma for buildings and transportation is there's a huge effort to make it on a regional basis. So for electrifying transportation and electrifying buildings and making transportation safer, those seem to be regional goals. So those aren't just our goals. And they may even be more than regional. They may be spreading throughout the state also. So that's the good news. The hard news is the topic came up of what we need to do that we don't have control on, and that is general consumerism and lifestyle. And that so we have a huge carbon footprint of how we live, and that's something we still need to work on as a third leg of the chair. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always nice to hear Petaluma leading. Let's see. I'd like to give credit to the city for holding a public workshop on a new skate park in town, and both Councilmember Barnacle and I attended. It was very well attended with lots of good ideas. I mean, as always, funding will be the challenge, but it was fun to be in a room full of people under 50, 40, and look around and see where the new leaders for the city will come from. And thank you to our public speaker, Zyra Garcia, for introducing the topic of the Los Cien event, an honest conversation about anti-Blackness. The programs that Los Cien puts on are fabulous. There were over 300 people in the room, and they were turning away folks. It was very nice to have the city manager and city staff represented at the meeting as well. And sort of the takeaway for me was that we need to continue to recognize that systemic racism is real, and that to change requires personal and social commitment. And if we mean the statements and goals that we put in our plans and write or speak regarding diversity, equity, and racism, we need to be accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. And it's not about guilt or blame. It's about progress and equity. And so fabulous to hear that the council is on that page. There was a moment when this was the hottest subject, and the risk is that it no longer gets its due. And I think this council is expressing that it will get its due. Let's see. Also, that would be my comments for the evening as well. Thank you. And let's pass to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Petaluma community and council and our staff. We are indeed proud members of Los Cien, and we're very thankful for their kickoff forum on anti-Blackness and racism, and looking very much forward to subsequent forums. Our city attorney is not here this evening. Thank you, Assistant City Attorney Dylan Brady, for pinch hitting. So I will leave the timing for the mobile home ordinance. I know staff is looking at it. And it's a good idea that we can bring it back with the different models. I know that staff has really drilled down into it. I don't know what the timing is, so I would have to ask Dylan.
Sure, I can help with that. It's definitely a priority for us. We've been in touch with Santa Rosa's city attorney's office, so we are familiar with their model. I think it is next on our priority list for legislation. I believe we have a pretty decent draft already in the works here. One issue is these mobile home ordinances are often litigated. So we'll have to work on, if we do look at a new model, that will be susceptible to any legal challenges rather than if we pick and choose amendments to our own ordinance, but that's something we can definitely look at. I would say as soon as we get done with the tenant workshops in the next 2 weeks, that will be our main focus.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And then not lastly, but wanted to touch base on the Cedar Grove. We have a variety of things happening with Cedar Grove, and I'm going to ask our Assistant City Manager, Ryan Cochran, to give an update on at least one aspect of Cedar Grove.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. Just wanted to update on Pedro's comments from the public comment. So city staff are keenly aware of some of the issues out at Cedar Grove. Council may be aware we did receive a grant about 8 or 9 months ago to begin some work out there. So it's an encampment resolution grant, and it provides us funding for a very holistic and wide-ranging series of steps that we can deploy out at Cedar Grove to help the residents that are living out there, from employment services to housing navigation services to shelter services and everything in between. So we are beginning that rollout, and we have taken some steps already, but I think you will begin to see additional things happening out there, including a lot of collaboration with our many nonprofit partners, including COTS and Downtown Streets team, as well as others. So that is in the works and will be coming up shortly. And so we hope to see some improvements out there very soon.
Thank you, Brian. And Councilmember Cater Thompson, if you could pass Pedro's contact information, and then we'll reach out to the neighborhood.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. And then finally, on a less than happy note, we had a at 5:30 this morning. We had a water main break in downtown, and water was shut off approximately at 6 a.m. It was in Telephone Alley, and we completed initial repairs, but around 8 a.m. The leak got larger, so we had it affected a 5-foot section of pipe that needed to be replaced. So we've been doing outreach. Just to ascertain any damage, if there has been any, and any impacts. And so staff has been on it, and much appreciated to Public Works staff. I would ask anybody listening, if you have been affected by that water main break, to give our risk management folks a call at 707-776-3780, 707-776-3780. And that concludes my comments for this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and I do want to commend staff for their seriousness in taking the way they're taking on the homelessness situation in Petaluma and the community meetings. The meeting that the city held for the riverfront properties to communicate with them the efforts being made and the opportunity for more efforts really helped that neighborhood. So hopefully the Cedar Grove meeting will touch the same competency there. Thanks. Next, we have our consent calendar. Is there anyone wishing to pull an item from consent? And if not, I'd like to move it to the public comment on the consent calendar here. And I do not have any cards. Did we receive any early submittals?
Mr. Mayor, no, we did not receive any any comments on the consent calendar.
Thank you. And can we check with our Zoom audience to see who wants to join our public comment on the consent calendar?
Thank you. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to an item consent calendar should raise a virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Mayor, we currently have one member with their hand raised.
And let's proceed to have their comment.
ZG, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
I just have, well, I know you can't answer it, but would this public comment under the mobile homes be part of it, or should I hold off until we get to the housing, the ordinance?
You might make the comments to see if it fits, and as you begin your comments, we'll advise you.
Okay. All right. So I know you all mentioned mobile homes and that you are reflecting it based on Santa Rosa's ordinance. I just want to point out that there was, it was in the Press Democrat that not all Santa Rosa mobile home residents
Zaira,
are
this is-
benefiting. Go ahead.
I apologize, but this is not a consent calendar comment, so you can submit your comment in writing to me, and I can provide it to the city council.
Got it.
It's,
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the dais for anyone here. Can I get a motion?
Move approval of items 1 through 5.
I'll second.
And Mayor,
So-
we do have to close public comment.
And so let's close public comment and move back to the dais here. And I believe we have a motion to approve the consent calendar by Councilmember Healy and a second from Councilmember Shribs. And let's proceed with the roll call vote.
Barnacle,
Aye.
Cater Thompson,
Aye.
Healy,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes?
Now,
Yes.
Hosake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Fabulous. Thank you all. And now moving to public hearings. And we have tonight the resolution approving allocation of $500,000 of housing in lieu funds to Mid-Penn Housing Corporation or affiliate for acquisition and development of the Washington Commons Affordable Housing Project located at 817, 821, and 825 East Washington Streets, and authorizing the city manager to sign documents for financing of the project and finding that this action is not a project pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15378. And I believe we have Karen Chamizo of our staff to help us here.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Happy New Year. I think this is the first time I've had the ability to be in front of you so far. And good evening, community members and fellow staff. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this item forward and have a conversation with you and your consideration on this item this evening. I'm coming forward this evening as the housing manager. I did want to highlight that with the formation of the new community development department, that with the building planning and housing division, we're all working together. I do have myself here as part of the presentation. We also have Brian O, who is our new community development director, available to address your questions throughout this evening. Next slide. So I wanted to start off and highlight the agenda items this evening. So this is for the consideration of funding for the Washington Commons Affordable Housing Project. The item before you this evening is really about the consideration of funding. In that presentation, I'll be highlighting a little bit about the council goal alignment in prioritizing and incentivizing developments. And I'll be highlighting some of the new tools the city has in order to move affordable housing development forward, as well as some of the new state and local policy. We'll also I'll be providing a snapshot of some of our recent developments as a way to highlight some of the different ways we've been able to work creatively over the past couple of years with developments as far as bringing forward some of our affordable housing. And I'll also very briefly touch on who it is, what community members are benefiting, so we can kind of share a little bit of highlight of what kind of jobs are those community members that are earning 40, 50, and 60% of AMI. What does that look like? What is the hourly wage, and what type of community members will we be providing housing units for? From there, what I will be doing is I have Allie Gaylord with me this evening of Mid-Penn Housing. She will be talking a little bit this evening about Mid-Penn's developer experience, as well as, digging a little bit deeper into the Washington Commons development, the amenity and programs. She's also going to be highlighting the development process and funding. There's a term that we like to use in affordable housing called the capital stack, something that was brought forward in a housing workshop, but we're going to have her briefly touch on that because it does tie into kind of the timeline for city investment and just the timeline for development and what that means. And then after that, we will have plenty of time for questions and comments regarding the item before you, which is the consideration of funding for the project. Next slide. So I wanted to just briefly, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I wanted to put a slide up just to kind of orient people as to where the project is, the proposed project is actually located. So it is located on 817, 821, there's 3 parcels there together on the East Washington site. And that's really just kind of for a quick visual reference as to where the location of the project is. And Allie Gaylord will be talking more about getting into the details of that. Next slide. So for city staff, I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into our proposed city funding and project timeline. So again, really the item before you is a consideration of funding. I wanted to just highlight the fact that the city staff is bringing forward kind of a different approach than what we've taken in the past. Whereas we don't have a fully approved project, this is really about the site acquisition, but we also wanted to highlight that MidPen has filed a letter of intent to file an SB 35 application for the project. So we haven't received the formal application on the project, so the details that provided are based on information provided thus far, and they're subject to modification as part of the development review process. The next item I wanted to talk about is the Housing in Lieu Fund and kind of some background on some of our different housing sources. I'm going to try to avoid getting into, as Peggy refers to, the alphabet soup, because there's a lot of acronyms that we use when we're talking about affordable housing. And staff is suggesting funding from our Housing in lieu funds. And part of that is some of the programs that are currently available through HCD for match funding and other incentives. The Housing in Lieu Fund is, because it's already considered a housing source, will count on funding applications but can't be used as eligible match for our local housing trust fund program. And so for that reason, it's important why we have different funds. We have the Housing in Lieu. We also have our commercial linkage funds, and we also have what we call our PLHA, permanent local housing funds that can be used. I can answer some questions later. I hope I didn't lose too many folks on getting into those details. I think the key about providing the deal terms for the funding is that it really demonstrates the commitment from the city as far as supporting moving the project forward. They can, when they're applying for funding, that qualifies as local match, and it also shows the dedication on the city to support the project and help move it forward. Some of the specific deal terms that we've talked about is the funding would be used for acquisition of the site. The funding would be in first position, and it would be secured with a promissory note and a deed of trust, as well as a regulatory agreement. The regulatory agreement is really the key document that the city uses. It outlines the level of affordability of the units, so whether it's going to be 50%, 60%, or 80% AMI, but it also has a performance clause in there. And so while the city, we recognize this is for acquisition funding, we also make sure that there's a timeline in there where the city, has the ability, if the project doesn't move forward, to be able to talk with the developer, make a change, potential other developer, and move the project forward in other ways. And so the regulatory agreement really gives us the ability to structure a deal to ensure that the property would be used for affordable housing development. I wanted to highlight a little bit about the timeline of the acquisition and the developer's sense of urgency. So the developer, we're really working on building on the city council goal from previous council. I realize we'll be reviewing those goals and objectives this year with our council. But there was really, how could we incentivize development and work with affordable housing developers? Kendall, next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to just take a quick moment and kind of provide a snapshot of some of our recently completed and some of our units that we currently have in the pipeline, and just kind of highlight at a high level some of the different tools and policies that have helped us, move these projects forwards. So I did want to just acknowledge I have a typo in the number of units for Mid-Penn. That's actually 44 units versus 42 units. My apologies on that. But I wanted to just highlight, we start with the PEPR Riverbend project, which is down on Petaluma Boulevard South. That was recently completed, but that project was probably in the city pipeline for about 8 to 10 years. Yeah. And part of that, what I wanted to highlight is that the timing of a development project and the policies and programs that are available and the funding that's available makes all the difference in the ability to support our, development partners in moving those forward. Our Mid-Penn project is currently in construction. Why they have all their funding, when they were putting together what we call the capital stack, which is all of the soft funding in a project, I think they completed about 11 different funding applications to different programs, to the state and to the county, in order to be able to accumulate all the subsidy funding that would be needed. We also have Burbank River Place funding. So while that project is approved through a new tool, SB 35 application, they've not acquired the site yet, and they're applying for additional funding, but the project is moving forward on a faster track because HCD had some additional funding, which they're calling accelerator funding. So it's another example of the Burbank River Place project. It probably would be taking longer to get across the finish line, but with the combination of the SB 35 as well as the additional state accelerator program funding, they've been able to bring that project forward. The last example I'll go into is our project with Burbank, the studios at Montero. That is a project that the state came out with our Home Key, the Home Key program. That provided us to partner with Burbank on an acquisition and rehab of an existing hotel, which is going to in turn provide 60 units of permanent supportive housing. So without digging into the details that much more, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the different, how in our development pipeline, how the different fluctuations in county, state, and local funding, can affect, projects moving along quickly or them taking a little bit longer, as well as some of the new policies and programs we have, similar to like AB 2162 and SB 35. So in looking at that also, it was nice to put those numbers together. We have some pretty steep numbers that are proposed in our housing element, which staff will be presenting more on that, I believe, next month. But if you take a look at where we are kind of in our, completed projects and our pipeline projects and moving towards that goal, we have, 266 units in our very low, and I believe our goal is 499. So we have a good start, but that good start is really based on just kind of the shifts we've seen in policies and funding availability. The last thing I just wanted to quickly highlight before I turn it over to Ally is I wanted to give you a snapshot of who we're really serving here. So the project as it's proposed, which it is just proposed, it could change based on funding sources, based on the final, capital stack that's put together for the project. But I think we have proposed, 30, 50, and 60% AMI units, somewhere in that range. But just to give you an idea, a family of 4 making 30% AMI is earning $35,650 a year to support a family of 4. That comes out to $17.13 an hour. Those, people in those positions, you can think of it, they They're probably in the hospitality industry. They could be more back of the house, more prep cooks, more dishwashers. If we look at 50% AMI, the average income there is for a family of four is $59,400 that the household is earning in order to support a family of four. That comes out to $28.58 an hour. The last example I'll provide is households at 60% of area median income for a family of four is earning a total of $71,280. That's an hourly wage of $34.27 an hour. We're talking about members in our community that are working in hospitality. We're also talking about members of our community that are our preschool teachers that work in K through 12, that are in entry-level business administrative positions. And so I just thank you for allowing me to share that with you. I just wanted to provide a real snapshot of, the tools, the funding, the programs, and for this funding consideration, who it is that we would really be serving. And with that, I would like to introduce Allie Gaylord she is the Director of Development for the North Bay, and she will be diving more into details, the project timeline, capital stack, the project amenities and services.
Thanks, Karen. Good evening, council members. My name's Allie Gaylord. As Karen said, I'm the Director of Housing Development for the North Bay for Mid-Penn Housing. Mid-Penn Housing, just a little bit of background. We have basically three functions. We're a nonprofit real estate development arm. I head up the North Bay office. We've got 5 local development employees in our Santa Rosa office, and we really focus on the Sonoma County portfolio here. We also have property management. So we have on-site professional property management at all of our properties that are employed by Mid-Penn, and we employ everyone from the regional property management staff to the community manager to the maintenance techs. So we're really on-site providing that touch all of the time. We also provide resident services. So we provide in-house services, social services to our residents based on their needs. So depending on the population of folks that live at our properties, it could be anything from financial classes to child development classes to something that might be more serving folks who might be formerly homeless with referrals. We also partner with local agencies like COTS or the County Behavioral Health for folks who are really highly acute and in need. Next slide, please. Just quickly to highlight our Sonoma County portfolio, Mid-Penn has completed or has upcoming in construction or upcoming developments in the pipeline of over 250 affordable housing units. So we first completed Fetters Apartments in the Sonoma Valley in 2017, which is a family housing property targeting up to 60% AMI folks. We then completed Celestina Gardens, which is targeted to seniors. And this is really great because it's kind of an intergenerational community. They're very close together. And so there's a lot of interaction, including a community garden. And it's also right by a school. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you have a chance to drive by, please do. It's great. We've also got 414 Petaluma under construction, which is on Petaluma Boulevard, our first development in Petaluma, which broke ground this past spring. Mahonia Glen in Santa Rosa, which broke ground in the fall and has not enjoyed the rain, but we're back on track. And we've got a couple other projects that are in the pipeline. Next slide, please. This is the site location for Washington Commons. This is a fantastic housing site. It's very close to many of the amenities that we look for when we're looking to site housing development, such as between a couple of grocery stores. There's an elementary school within walking distance. The library is across the street. The swim center and the skate park are across the street. It's located within a half a mile of the SMART station. Petaluma Transit runs down East Washington. So it's just a fabulously located site that is ripe for housing. It's also, identified as a housing opportunity site in the most recent revision of the housing element that the city currently has in process with HCD. Next slide. As Karen mentioned, this project is not coming forward for a project approval right now. We don't have a finalized development project. We don't have the project planned, but something that we include in all of our projects. I just wanted to highlight some of these things. So this would be a 52-unit apartment home community targeted to families earning 60% or less of the area median income, which is $71,000 for a 4-bedroom household. We would plan for studio through 3-bedroom unit types, so types that would accommodate large families. Typical on-site amenities that we include in our developments include community rooms, which is where we do some of those resident services classes that include a kitchen, so we could do cooking demonstrations and nutrition classes, a learning center for school-age children, on-site laundry room, and my favorite, on-site secured bicycle parking. That's very, very important to be able to get folks to mode shift and to ride their bikes if they don't have to haul it up to their apartment, if they don't have to use their interior storage to store their bike to keep it safe. So that's something that we're really proud of being able to provide, and also providing outlets so that people can charge their electric bikes in the bike rooms. We do take great pains to do sustainability measures. We plan all of our developments going forward to be all electric. We plan on reduced parking to also encourage mode shift. We work with Greenpoint Rated to make sure that we have sustainable practices both in building construction and in the materials that we choose. We do low water landscaping and EV charging in the parking lot. Mid-Penn also has goals of diverse, equitable, and inclusive hiring practices. We set goals for MIBI and WEBI, so minority-owned and women-owned business targets. And we also will be paying prevailing wages on the construction of this project. Just another community benefit is that this development would provide affordable homes on a vacant, underutilized infill site along the East Washington corridor, and it would provide an improved pedestrian experience along this street without that gap of just vacant land along the road. Next, please. So this is a high-level view of our kind of community development process. So even though we would be planning on getting our development approvals through SB 35, we take great pride in being good neighbors and really seeking out community input, even though it may not be required of us. Our property at 414 Petaluma was actually the first SB 35 approval that Petaluma did, and we did our voluntary community engagement, even though it wasn't required, and it went really well. We really like to engage the neighbors to understand what they are looking for us to develop in their community. We get a lot of feedback about what particular populations we might target for housing. So in our 414 Petaluma outreach meetings, we heard we need housing for farm workers, we need housing for low-income families, we need housing for homeless, and we were able to incorporate all of those populations in that development. So this community engagement process has not yet started. We would do that post-acquisition. We would also plan on voluntarily coming before Planning Commission and potentially City Council in that community input process so that we could make sure that we're having multiple venues of getting public comment and feedback through this process. So we would anticipate getting our land use approvals through SB 35 probably by mid-2023. Then we would embark on the financing process, which is a fairly long process. As Karen mentioned, we have multiple competitive sources of funding that we have to apply for and win prior to getting the project fully funded. And then once we are successful in fully funding the project, we would move to construction and then leasing and occupancy likely in 2026. Next, please. So this is the example estimated capital stack that we were mentioning before. This is just to give a rough idea, because obviously we don't have any, we don't have all of this funding committed, but this is just a sample of some of the sources that we use. So I will highlight the largest kind of piece of the pie here is our federal housing tax credits. Pretty much every affordable housing development that you see will use those. The other largest chunk is a state funding. So there are many state funding programs that we apply to competitively to fund these projects. And then the last about 20% is local funding. So either from the city or the county makes up that piece. And then there's a small, about, I think it's 7% in this chart, is a small conventional permanent loan. So just a very small piece of the capital stack can be supported by what our residents pay because we're keeping the rents so low. Next, please. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Ally, for that summary and reminder of the complexity of the capital stack. So with this, really, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the things that we've talked about so far. So staff has kind of highlighted some of the innovative approaches, the suggestion for this project in funding a loan for acquisition prior to the project being approved. The project would be going through the SB 35. We've also kind of highlighted a little bit about some of the new tools we have, speaking of SB 35, as well as some of the highlights in how the funding sources have changed, and how staff is working hard to be innovative in working alongside our affordable housing developers and coming up with some creative solutions. I also wanted to highlight that as we've been talking about the project, that during the approval process, that there would be time for community organizations, city staff, elected officials, and community members to comment on the project to ensure that the project, when it is finally brought forward for consideration in review, that it would have the amenities that were really going to best serve the community. Next slide. And with that, I just wanted to highlight that is the staff's recommendation, the City Council approve a resolution allocating $500,000 of the housing in lieu funds to the Mid-Penn Housing Corporation for the acquisition and development of the Washington Commons project. And with that, staff is available for comments. There's myself as the housing manager, Brian O. as our community development director, and Ally Gaylord can answer any project-specific questions. So with that, I will turn it over to the council for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
And thank you very much. This is a chance for council to ask a few questions here. Do we have questions? Councilmember Pozeke?
Thank you for those presentations. I'm pretty excited to have Mid-Penn coming back to us. I'm excited to see a few studio apartments in this development. I'm excited about the number of parking spaces. I'm excited about the other solar and EV amenities. And I had a question or two. I wonder if Ms. Gaylord is able to, I'm wondering, I can't remember the spread of the unit sizes at 414 North Petaluma. I wonder if it's almost identical to these, or is it a little bit larger?
Would you like me to answer right now?
If you could.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is about the same. We also targeted kind of large families at that property as well. So we have about 25% 2 bedrooms, 25% 3 bedrooms, and then the rest are 1 bedrooms, and we've got a couple of studios there.
And is that, are the 3-bedroom units about 1,200 square feet? Is that?
I can't remember exactly. It's
Okay.
about 11 or 1,200.
Yeah. Is there any chance when you have this number of parking spaces, have you done this before, or is there any law preventing you from doing it to, for example, provide some cars that can be shared by different families, when you're trying to limit the number of cars that.
We've looked at car share in Petaluma. There's not any, I don't think like Lyft I don't think Zipcar or anything like that comes up here. So there's not something that Mid-Penn has run as our own program, but certainly we anticipate that the mode shift, it would be attractive to folks if there are less parking spaces so that they would use their bikes more, they would use public transportation or walk more.
And then last one, in this same regard, are you able to, and have you ever disconnected parking rent from the unit rent?
Yes, that's actually standard for us.
Okay.
So we don't, kind of because of our financing system, we're not allowed to charge for parking. So we actually don't increase people's rent for having a parking stall. Okay. So yeah, it's always kind of disconnected.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Shribs?
Thank you. There's a couple questions on the amount of it, since we're talking about $500,000 here. That's coming up front of a project rather than tail end. So I wasn't quite clear, is this on a loan or is it a gift? Is it is it returnable? What is the legal implications here? You know, is it, if things go sour and the project, there's a problem? There's a problem with the property, is something goes right, environmental review, something goes wrong. Does that money come back to us, or does it get lost, and how does it get returned?
Thank you. Good evening. How it would be a loan to Mid-Penn Housing. It would be secured with a promissory note and a deed of trust. And we would have the regulatory agreement that would basically restrict the long-term use of that project to being an affordable housing development. If there were some challenges that happened and Mid-Penn was not able to bring the project to completion, that's where we have our regulatory agreement with Mid-Penn, and we put in their development performance guidelines. And at that point, it would be a conversation with Mid-Penn, but our funding would be secured with the land.
Good, thank you. Then with that funding secured, well, first off, I really like the idea of what you're presenting, because I was with the architects that came through and consulted with us, and they were talking heavily about putting up 4-story buildings on down Washington Street, high density, and this looks like the perfect project for something like that. So just looking at the diagrams, the conceptual diagrams, this could be. And so again, Councilman Posake was mentioning the number of parking and the number of bikes. And what was listed, what we saw, is a pretty limited bike rack, 9 stalls, and also limited parking, 20-something parking spaces. And having just gone to a micromobility workshop that was International Awards, and I know Europe is far ahead of us right now in developing systems of e-car shares, micro car shares, e-bike shares systems, phone applications. We don't quite have that here yet, but I'm imagining within the next 2 years, funding and technology should be arriving here shortly within the distance. So I'd like you to keep that in mind, that we actually use, and in the bike room, that we actually, not more than 9 stalls that was listed, but maybe multiple, and with a multiple secure system in place, because there's now bike share systems with the one that just got awarded in Europe, had special security, so it'd be very, very difficult for someone to come in and take a bike, because that seems to be a high item right now for thievery. E-bikes, very popular right now. So that's one suggestion, and especially if we can get and the sharing is not an Uber or Lyft, it's where the community owns the vehicle and they share the vehicle. So, which could also be run by someone that's actually manages it like an Uber. So that's a slightly different share system that we currently have here, which is you call someone up and someone drives you. This is actually a vehicle, you rent it for an hour and bring it back to the same spot. And all the spaces if we go electric, and especially there should be programs, 100% of the spaces should be electric charge stations, not half or third as listed in what we saw. And then along the roof, if it's, I'm not sure if the roofing up there, I remember in some other diagrams, I've seen some possible green roofs or recreation, or folks can get up there and sit like a patio, because the patio area that's described in there and the play area are going to be completely in shadow of the building and pretty cool, which would be nice maybe during the summertime, but maybe not so much in the wintertime, since it's heavily shaded, surrounded in a U shape by the whole 4-story building. So that could be kind of dreary looking. So maybe if there was a way of conceptually putting in a rooftop air surface area that folks could at least sit on top of and get views and get some sun, get out of their apartment, because that space outdoors is pretty small and tight that you have described there. So that's what I'd like to recommend on that. So just a little bit more of that, as well as of course, solarization. But overall, I really like the concept. It's in line with what we've seen from the consulting architects that came through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy?
Thank you. I had, I guess, 3 areas of questions, and then I'll save my comments for
Yes,
after
please.
public comment. I think some people are jumping ahead of that. That's fine. But I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit more on the performance clause, including key milestones. And I believe Councilmember Shribs was asking about the city's security. And so would the milestones be such that after some period of time, say 3 years, 4 years, if MidPen is unsuccessful in getting their financing stack lined up, we could talk about transferring the property to someone else, we could foreclose, get our cash back? What are the options?
I think all the options that you mentioned are plausible in there. I think the key is, and I apologize, I have to go back and look at the exact wording that we usually use in there, but it is, usually it's a 2 or 3 year initial performance clause to move the project forward. And at that point, the city can enter into conversations with MidPen about, how is the status of the project going? What is the funding? I would have to review one to see exactly what that language has looked like that's been presented, but I could definitely make note of that and take a look at what that agreement might look like.
Yeah, if you could share that with council down the road, I think that would be appropriate. Okay. Do we have similar performance clause languages with Danco?
Yes, we do. It's pretty standard where we have performance clauses in our regulatory agreements.
Okay, thank you. And then a question, I guess, for Ms. Gaylord. 52 units, 22 parking spaces. Will those be assigned, or will that be on a first-come, first-come basis?
It would be on a first come, first serve or reasonable accommodation basis. Some folks may need parking for certain medical reasons or other reasons. So that would be assigned through our property management process.
Okay. And then in the memo we got this afternoon, we were given the total estimated cost for building the project, which is $39 million. Thank you for that. And if you divide that by 52 units, it comes out to a nice round $750,000 per unit, which is kind of staggering for what we're calling affordable housing. What's your comparable figure for 414?
It's about the same. The affordable housing references the amount that the people are paying, not what it costs to build. So it's affordable
Clearly.
for folks to rent. So that is typically kind of the going rate right now.
So that's comparable to what other developers are putting in and seeking funding for?
That's right.
Okay. Those are the only questions I had right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a council member on Zoom, and I don't have access to whether he's got his hand up or not, so I'll just ask him. Councilmember Barnacle, do you have questions?
No questions. I have comments.
Thank you. Then. And
I don't have any questions.
well, I do. Always. I note that this was a project that had entitlement for market rate, and now it's in our affordable housing goals, shall we say. And you answered the question about the AMI mix and how the funding drives that. But how do we marry that against knowledge of local need for things? I mean, I understand the process that MidPen is going through, but how does the city find a metric for what AMIs are most needed and how we balance it across various, is the financing getting us, these outside financing stacks, getting us the goals we want for our community.
Kevin, I think that without having the data clearly in front of me, I think that information would be included in the housing element, kind of in our housing needs assessment, where we take a look at, what is the need for the community and what is that level of affordability. And I think it's a mix of how that formula is and those numbers are created. It might be a question, I'm thinking maybe we're fortunate enough to have Heather Hines here with us via Zoom. She might be able to potentially address that, and/or Brian O might be able to address that as they have more experience kind of in our long-term planning for the city.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Heather Hines. Just really tag teaming with Karen's response. When you look at what our regional housing needs allocation are, the lower income, affordability is what we're looking at. So we're really I think Karen was right at something over 500 that we need in the very low income category. So that is obviously an area we need based on our regional needs allocation. It's also been an area that we've had the hardest time getting projects built at those lower affordability rates. So I think that both Mid-Penn projects, this one that is being developed as we speak, and the one that was approved at 414, did a really nice job hitting those lower income categories between low and very low to meet our needs.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and I appreciate it. And I just like to think that it's not just Congress's decision on taxes that drive what we get, but that we put our fingerprint on what our community needs. So, and then it would appear likely that we'll have to add funding to this project at a future date. And with that project cost of $39 million, in the slide showing 8% local, 3.5-ish kind of number. Do our waived impact fees will they compensate all of that, or will we be dipping into other actual cash the city has?
I think with the recent resolution that provides for a fee reduction, we'll support the project at this point because it is just in a conceptual state, and things are fluctuating and changing, such as construction loan interest, the actual cost of projects, that it is anticipated that Mid-Penn would be returning to the city with an additional request for funding. In general, I think our affordable housing projects, we usually put about $2 million of cash funding in. Again, the project is very much at a conceptual stage, and we would, of course, be coming back to council with more full details on that. But it is anticipated that there would be a future request for some funding for the project.
Can you make any wild guess on the impact fee reduction at this time, or is it way too preliminary?
Yeah, we've calculated about $1 million of impact fee reduction for this project.
Fabulous, thank you. And
Kevin, can I
Yes.
just comment on one thing about that? I mentioned it earlier. We have our local housing trust fund program the city went through the process of creating. It provides the city the ability to apply to HCD for funding, and it provides the city the ability to our impact fee reduction actually qualifies as local match. So we could actually apply to the local housing trust fund and HCD program. The city would apply on behalf of the project and potentially match that $1 million in fee reduction. And so as staff has been thinking about the pipeline of projects and the timeline, kind of how that alphabet soup comes together, that is something that we have taken into consideration. And the request for proposal, the state usually issues it around August of every year. But I would like to say that we were successful in bringing in funding for our Studios at Montero project. And so that could be the potential versus it being actual cash from in lieu or commercial linkage or one of our other cash funding sources, the ability to just leverage that fee waiver.
Oh, I like leverage.
Or fee
Okay.
reduction, excuse me, yes, okay?
Thank you. And we have a question before we go to a question?
It has two questions. First being it's affordable housing. When it's all said and done, completed, and everything meets expectations, and when the first folks move in, what would actually be the approximate rent of a 1 or 2 bedroom unit in this place compared to what's normally rented here for 1 and 2 bedrooms?
Yes, I do. I've got some of our proposed rents. And so for a 1-bedroom at 30% of area median income, $683. And it goes all the way up to, let me say, a 30% AMI rent at a 3-bedroom would be $1,099. So that's on the lower end. And then 60% area median income rent for a 1-bedroom would be $925, up to a 3-bedroom at $1,543. So obviously the 1-bedroom is much, much, much discounted to market rate rent. I mean, I think at least half, if not more. And I think you can go all the way up to the 3-bedroom. It's going to be at least 20% below market. We haven't done a current market study, but they're vastly discounted to market rate.
Good, because when you say affordable, we want to make sure that what that means at the bottom end to the person who's actually going to be living there. So it's clear to them that it will be affordable. Because I know I have relatives trying to find rental units, and it's a funny thing, something below $2,000 is very difficult right now. That's worth living in. The other question I have is, since this is $500,000 and it's housing in lieu funds, what is the total quantity of housing in lieu funds do we have? And part of that also is, where else could this money go? Is this the best place to put that $500,000 compared to other possible projects that might be coming down, like the Corona Station area down there? And will we have enough to support several of these, maybe they're coming down our pipeline that we're projecting, for, let's say, for the Corona Station area?
To address your question, I believe the estimated amount in the Housing in Lieu Fund is about, I'm gonna round up, it's like 1.791,129, but like 1.8 million is approximately what we have, and that's been confirmed with our Director of Finance. And I think in regard to your concern about funding for other projects or in lieu funding, if it would best be used for this project or for other projects, because the housing in lieu funding cannot be leveraged with local housing trust fund. That's why staff is recommending that as the source, because it's not an eligible matching fund. And the other requirement of a local housing trust fund is the funding has to actually be in the account at the time you apply to HCD. So for those two reasons, the Housing in Lieu Fund is not a good match for the local housing trust fund for leveraging our funding. And that's why staff is making that recommendation. Whereas the commercial linkage and the PLHA and some of the other alphabet soup of funding that we have does qualify as local match.
Very good. So this is, in your opinion, a really good value for the dollar that we're putting on this project.
Yes, it also demonstrates the city's support for the project moving forward, which will makes Mid-Penn a lot more competitive in funding applications.
And is the acquisition close to being done, or is it still to be done and still be the work done? Just so we know how close are we to actual acquisition.
It is still in the process of being done. Allie, I'll let you comment kind of more on the timeline.
Sure. Our hope is to complete the acquisition by the end of this month.
Councilmember Now.
Thank you. The final project's going to be projected out to 2026. So when you're talking about rents, is that today's rent numbers and today's salary, or is that 2026?
Yes, the numbers that we're speaking are today's rents and today's incomes, and those are published at the state and federal level. So they're allowed to raise as incomes and rents go up, but they're always capped at that certain level.
Okay, because just over the weekend, I noticed that they were hiring it in and out, and they're paying like $20.50 an hour, where a preschool teacher doesn't get too much more than that. So when you were talking about a preschool teacher and our educators, they don't get too much more than that. The other thing is, does that include utilities, the rent?
No, we actually net out utilities out of that figure. So the residents will pay their own like PG&E bills, but we kind of subtract out utility allowance before that rent that we're citing, so that they're able to maintain their total housing payment is about 30% of their income.
And that's the other thing. PG&E has like reduced rates for the low income folks, especially senior citizens or families.
Absolutely. And that's something that our resident services kind of can help with, getting people on those care rates to make sure that they're paying the lowest possible rate.
And then would we put solar panels to reduce the PG&E even more? I know this is a resolution on money, but...
Right. Well, so like we said, the project is not designed yet, but yes, we do solar on all of our properties. And just depending on how much the solar load is and how much roof space we have, depends on how much we can offset, whether we do common areas or then other, like the resident units, et cetera.
So actually, our portion, according to your pie chart, was only 8%, which is a drop in the bucket. So thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to open up public comment on this. And may I ask the clerk, have we received public comment prior to meeting?
Mayor McDonald, no comments were submitted prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And I currently have 2 cards, but I'd like our moderator to have our stock statement about getting his comments in.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to this item should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. Mayor, at this point, we have one person from the virtual audience that would like to speak.
Thank you. Let's take that Zoom person and bring them in.
That's good. The first person I have is SB. SB, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, thank you so much. This is Sheila, Sheila Baker. I would just want to say this sounds like a wonderful project, beautiful project, and will no doubt give many lucky families the home that they so desperately need right now. I want to just mention too about the car share. One thing that we do so much more than we do now is the concept of ride share, rather than car share, ride share. In my community, I've had so many beautiful good rides and really, really critical, like even to the hospital or doctors or whatever, from my neighbors, because I don't drive. And not everyone rides a bike. And even though I have to admit that I do a lot, I can really kind of imagine a time that I won't. And then I know some of my senior neighbors don't. Well, all of them practically don't ride bikes. But the ride sharing idea hopefully comes back. Hopefully people will be encouraged in this wonderful project to reach out and share their rides with their neighbors. And I just want to say a great big yes on this. It's beautiful, the hard work that's already been done. I really commend Mid-Penn for it. And also thank you to the city council and mayor for considering this project. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
And Mayor, that's the last hand raised.
Thank you very much. And we have speaker cards, and I'd like to have Richard Cruz lead us off, to be followed by Steve Harris.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Richard Cruz. I'd like to say thank you for letting me speak tonight, first of all. I'm a field representative of Carpenters Local 71 here in Sonoma County, and I'm here tonight to voice concerns with labor standards involved with these developments, including healthcare, apprenticeship, and local hire. Now, without these labor standards, the fact remains that 1 out of 4 construction workers are without health insurance and healthcare. This leads to them being a lot of the times relying on emergency rooms, and the other times just not seeking medical attention whatsoever, if faced, God forbid, with an injury. But with that being said, this puts a lot of stress on the emergency rooms that already have a full book, being a son-in-law to an emergency worker myself. So I'm fully aware of what they have to deal with every day. And with the construction apprenticeship programs, it's proven to be an escalator to the middle class. And not only training tens of thousands of California residents every year, but at no cost to taxpayers. So policies that require the utilization of apprentices develop a pool of skilled labor in the local area who can work on future projects, including the ones brought before us tonight. And as more and more construction workers are faced with tremendous commutes outside of this county and further, that it takes a lot of time away from our families and our loved ones that we can't get back if we're seeing 4+ hours on the road. And hiring locally with the apprenticeship and prevailing wage, it really gives us that time that we wouldn't see, and we will be with our families as much as we are with our coworkers, instead of we see our coworkers more than our family. I really like to see that, and I hope you take these concerns into consideration. I want to say thank you again for letting me speak, and have a good evening.
Thank you. And Steve, do I have it right? Harry?
Sure. Good evening, City Council and staff. First, I would like to say thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Steve Harris. I'm a field representative for Carpenters Local 751, representing over 1,400 carpenters in the region. I am here tonight with concerns that should be taken into consideration with all developments, including the one in front of us tonight. Recent data released by UC Berkeley shows all working families is 30%, California's 30% of them are on some type of support program. And construction, 48% of those workers are on some type of supported program. Why are the standards so low for construction workers when we are the ones that build our communities, help create the homes you live in, and build the businesses that allows us to have a building to work in or hold public meetings in? Again, that is 48% of construction workers and their family that depends on some type of program that's costing taxpayers money. These aren't calculated into the development cost. Because of that, the community is paying the price. My concerns will be the requirements that the contractor have training, livable wage, or even health care for the workers building the project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And let's bring it back to the council, and this would be our period for comments and eventually motion. Councilmember Cater Thompson.
I would like to know if this is prevailing wage since public funds are used.
Yes, we're planning on paying prevailing wage.
Thank you.
And can I add to that, council members, that prevailing wage is a requirement of SB 35. So all projects that go through the SB 35 review process, there is a requirement for prevailing wage, and there's also, I believe, a requirement for skilled labor force for larger projects over, I think it's 75 units. So there's some of those provisions built into the SB 35 bill itself.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll move it.
And that's a motion, and from Councilmember Cater Thompson and Councilmember Shribs.
I second the motion.
Thank you very much for that second. Are we having other comments tonight?
Yes.
And thank you, Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. So there are a lot of good things about this project. I like the density. I like the location. I think 4 stories will be an eye-opener for a lot of people in the community, but I think it's the way of the future, and I don't have an issue with that. I think it's a very good project that is basically ruined by inadequate parking, grossly inadequate parking. And I will not be supporting this for that reason. And if MidPen, I'm sure this is going to pass, but if MidPen gets their financing together, whether or not the city provides financial support, then we will have to approve it because of SB 35. I get that. But just to connect a couple things on our consent calendar, this evening was item 5, which is a refinancing for Eden Housing Downtown River Apartments across from Exchange Bank, which, similar to this site, is on East Washington. It's close to SMART, it's close to Petaluma Transit, it's close to Golden Gate Transit. It has all the kinds of things that supposedly is going to make this project not require as much parking as others would. But it, in the staff report, is listed as being an 81 apartment development with 129 parking stalls. And we know that's grossly inadequate because the residents park across the street in the Golden Eagles Shopping Center every day in front of Exchange Bank and then run across the street to get their cars. So, I think there's a lot of wishful thinking here, and I really don't see a connection between how we get there and make this work without causing problems. The other thing I would say on the same subject is this is right around the corner from the apartments on Ellis Street, which is one of our most parking challenged neighborhoods in town. And the reason it's parking challenged, of course, is because you've got 2 or 3 families in each apartment. And so you have parking that is never available in that neighborhood. And this is going to just put an additional parking burden on a low-income, heavily Hispanic adjoining neighborhood, which I don't think is fair. And then, of course, Catherine Brabowski comes and talks to us pretty much at every meeting about parking at her mobile home park. I don't think people park on the fire lanes because they're being vindictive. I think they're parking on the fire lanes because that's the only place they can park. And you probably have the same situation at that mobile home park that we have at the apartments on Ellis Street with multiple families in single trailers. So that's the reality. And I just don't see how the parking works for this. 22, it's 0.4 parking spaces per unit. And I think that's just going to be, it's just not going to work. So I'm going to respectfully not support this funding request. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've been a little concerned about the parking too. That would be one element that pops up at this time. And I know it's lower than most of the ratios we've used at any other projects. It's cutting new ground. And this council has had conversation about minimum parking levels. And I think having this on the table and having it announced that we have concerns about this is going to help us have that conversation that planning needs to bring to us about what it means to have a minimum parking levels. And I'm looking forward to that item coming back to the council. That being said, I'm very excited about this project in general and kicking off another affordable housing project because we really need housing and we really need it in the affordable group. The staff report shows $1.7 million balance in the account and a potential $1.8 million in added fees coming into next year. And my comment is we really need to get that money out in circulation. Money in the bank houses no one. And so whatever we can do to foster next projects, this was, like I said, a market rate project fully entitled. And it's being converted to twice, or more than that, number of units of houses for people. So any creative efforts that can be made by staff or by nonprofits to take languishing market rates and incentivize them, I certainly support the city being a partner in making that happen. So with that, I'd like to ask the clerk for a roll call vote on this.
Mayor, I noticed Councilmember Barnacle has his hand up virtually.
Fabulous. Let's go to Councilmember Barnacle. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. So I'll just make a few comments. I appreciate the impact that
Councilmember Barnacle, your audio is cutting out. Can you try to adjust your microphone?
can try. Yeah, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
I'm gonna switch to my phone audio then, or to my computer audio. Sorry. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, sorry about that. All right. So I appreciate seeing the impact of our impact fee reductions on the capital stack. So thank you for showing that. You know, this is exactly where we want to be seeing affordable housing. So I'm very supportive of city staff working proactively with Mid-Penn and other housing providers to help make projects like this possible. I respectfully disagree with Councilmember Healy. I'm really happy to see us prioritizing housing over parking. My one concern is just that we're not making the alternative safer. So, the Eden housing project right now, the linkages to the smart station are poor at best. It's still an unsafe street with non-marked bike lanes and 5 lanes of traffic that people have to cross to get across the street. I'm similarly concerned with the linkages to the smart station from this site. And so, my guidance to city staff and to Mid-Penn is that I hope you look at projects or grant applications like the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant or the infrastructure grant, so things that basically make the linkages to other destinations such as smart and the trail down pavement.
Councilmember Barnacle, your audio is cutting out once again. I apologize for interrupting.
Fantastic. All right.
Now it sounds clear again. Yep.
Okay. I really think that we need to be making the alternative safer. That means linkages. So, what I'm not clear on is if someone was going to go from this place to smart, which way they'd go safely. My final comment on this project is that builds on what Councilmember Shribs mentioned earlier, is that, we need a lot more bike parking at this facility or other sort of mobility solutions, whether it be car share or scooter share or something. This is a perfect opportunity for micromobility, but with, 10 or fewer protected bike parking spaces, it's just not going to be nearly enough for the type of mode shift that we're hoping to see. I don't think that we need to have a play area at this site because you have Kenilworth right across the street, the library right across the street. So when I think about if I were going to remove something from this project so that I could get more alternative transportation solutions in there, that's what I would be looking at. But to the parking issue, there's a giant that's right across the street that is hardly ever used. And if we the city actually does experience the serious parking.
Councilmember Barnacle, again, I apologize for interrupting again. Your audio just cut out with your last sentence there.
That's all. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council Member Shribs.
Okay, so just bringing up the parking and the biking and mode shift that we're talking about here, as we need as a whole society to make a shift of some sort. And we know we need to start moving in this direction. Is there any way that we could put any requirements in that the folks that would occupy these apartments would agree to give up their own personal car to do a shared car or shared bicycle or have their bikes or scooters or use public transportation only? Is there anything that we could structure within the agreements with the folks coming in that they would be willing to accept this as a mode shift operation also, as well as just cheap housing?
As a landlord, I don't believe that there's anything that we could do to require that of people, but what we can do is make it easier for people to mode shift. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I think the 10 bike parking spaces might have been the exterior unsecured bike parking spaces, but what we try to do as a minimum is at least 1-to-1, so it would be 52 bike parking spaces in the secured bike room at a minimum, and we try and get more so that if people have more bikes as a family that they could store those there. So that is what our goal is, to try and make it easy as possible. And certainly if I can respond to Councilmember Barnacle's comment, it is very much on our radar to seek funding from the state programs that try and make biking and walking safer, close gaps in pedestrian connections, to fund as part of the funding of the affordable housing as well.
Yeah, but the goal would be the folks coming in would also be local workers and would not need city-to-city transport. That we would also, is there any way of, say, giving preference to folks who worked locally and lived locally so that they didn't need the cars? Is that possible to do that?
Yes, that's something that we could explore with the city, is doing a local preference.
And Councilwoman Gator Thompson?
Just quickly, you would not be renting these, it would be to a single family or a single person, not multiple people. If you have multiple people living in one of the units.
Right,
what's
it
your
would, excuse me, I'm sorry. It would be a household, so it wouldn't be able to be like subleased. It wouldn't be able to be multiple families exceeding the occupancy limit. So when we do the lease up, we have to income certify everyone. We check and make sure that everyone meets the low income requirements. And so all of the people have to be on the lease. We have to know who all is living there. So that's part of the professional management, where it's not going to be all of a sudden, 10 people living in an apartment that is meant for 4 people.
Thank you. But, well, I guess if it was meant for 4 people, could it be 4 different adults, friends living there?
They would have to be a household, so they would all have to have meet the income levels, and
okay.
Yeah, and they'd
I
all
get
have
it.
to be on the lease. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Roll call. I'm sorry, one more council.
Councilmember Barnacle.
now.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
I hope you can hear me. I think I fixed the sound issue. Just in response to the idea that we would force people to give up their cars or anything like that, I think that would be pretty inequitable unless we were going to do that for market rate housing as well. Because I just don't think we can do that. But I do support the idea of having preference for people who live and or work in the community, especially people who work in the community but don't live here.
Thank you. And Council Member Now?
I just wanted to remind us that this is a resolution to approve allocation of $500,000. But my question is, when can we make suggestions for parking and other things that we might want to see changed in this design? What's the timeline for that, and where is the proper channels? Because tonight is about allocating money.
Thank you for that question. Heather, I'm wondering if you can just kind of highlight the SB 35 and the approval process and how the project comes forward for community input and feedback.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. So an SB 35 project, as has been mentioned, is what the state calls a ministerial project. So what that means is there is no requirement for the city to have any, or there's not the ability for the city to have any discretionary review if the project meets our objective criteria. So if the project comes in and it meets all of our objective standards, it does all the qualifying of an SB 35 project, what that means is we approve it at a staff level with no discretion. So no decision by the Planning Commission, no SPAR hearing, no use permit hearing. But what I do want to emphasize, and Ali touched on earlier, when we did the 414 Petaluma Boulevard North project, which was also an SB 35 project, we worked collaboratively with MidPen. There were multiple community meetings to gather input. There was a study session at the Planning Commission where the Planning Commission was able to give feedback. And some of that is, we don't have the discretion to require. MidPen proved to be a fabulous partner and took a lot of that feedback and incorporated it into the revised design. So, you know, I want to be really upfront that as an SB 35 project, there's not an approval hearing that we're kind of used to with normal development projects, market rate development projects, but there will be opportunities for the public to learn about the project, provide input to MidPen, and as Ali mentioned, doing another study session or similar with the Planning Commission to get input on the project itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, this is where we count on the clerk because of my short memory. Do we have motion and second, and can you remind me who and who?
Yes, we have a motion from Vice Mayor Cater Thompson and a second from Councilmember Shribs.
Thank you very much. Would you proceed with roll call?
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
No?
McDonald,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1 with Healy voting no.
Thank you very much. Moving to item 7, introduction, first reading of an ordinance approving purchase and sales agreement of right-of-ways, real property for 276 Corona Road, APN 048080036, and 1364 North McDowell, APN 137011016, 1368 North McDowell, APN 1371011, 015, and 745 North McDowell, APN 048080037, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and all other documents necessary to complete the purchase and sale, and finding this action is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15301, existing facilities. And let's see, we are, who do we have on staff that is going to help us through this one? Is
Senior Traffic Engineer Ken Eichsted, who I believe is joining us virtually.
welcome, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor McDonald, council members, and the public on this first hearing to acquire the necessary easements for the North McDowell Complete Streets project. I'm going to provide you with a summary of the project, discuss the right-of-way and the different easements that are along the corridor, and then discuss the next steps. So the project length is just under 2 miles, and we're gonna talk about North McDowell as running south to north. It starts at Sunrise Parkway on the south, moving to Old Redwood Highway at the north. So this project started as a pavement reconstruction project back in the 2021 budget. It developed into a complete streets project with sidewalk gap closure in 2022, 2023 budgets. The initial survey effort was actually done with a drone, very limited, and that was expanded as we were going to close the sidewalk gaps into a full tidal survey. So The council approved the construction on October 3rd, 2022. The latest CIP has the acquisition for these easements that we're going to talk about. The city hired a right-of-way acquisition firm who went through the acquisition process that included the title review, valuation, the appraisal, acquisition services to gain the necessary easements. So these easements overall are minor. They're not large areas overall. As an example, one here, this is up at 1364, 1368 North McDowell Boulevard. It's 2 driveways. The condition that we have there is not a safe path of travel there that meets current ADA requirements. In order to develop that safe path of travel and allow for vehicular access onto the property, we're going to extend the driveway, basically put the sidewalk behind the driveway. So the green line that you see here is the outer edge of the sidewalk. And we are going to provide for a safe path of travel that meets the necessary slopes. So this view is a plan view. So we're looking down on it, on the area. We see the 2 green areas on either side of this figure. Those are the easements that we are acquiring. There's a red line, very faint red line that goes along the back of the sidewalk. And so we are acquiring a site access easement to provide for safe path of travel. Another example is just south of Corona. It's listed as 276 Corona Road, but it's the corner of Corona Road and North McDowell, the muffler shop. So this view is looking to the south, and we've got the high voltage utility lines that are in the sidewalk that create an impediment to safe path of travel. So we are going to acquire an easement on the back side of the sidewalk there to allow for the proper clearances for somebody who has mobility challenges to travel there. So here we're looking at the drawing. We're looking down at it, and on the left, the right side there, we see a little sliver, and that's the easement that we are acquiring. This drawing is kind of interesting just to have some background on the property rights, the easements within Petaluma. So utility easement that's shown in the light purple. That easement goes all the way up to the red there, and the red is the right of way. So the back of the sidewalk is basically the edge of the right of way. So we are acquiring a site access easement that's in the utility easement, but it doesn't serve that purpose. And this is a condition that actually happens a fair amount in Petaluma, and being an old city, it's an important aspect on it. So next steps, what we are doing here is we're in construction. None of this is going to delay the project. We're moving forward with the acquisitions. They have to go through 2 hearings. This is 4 properties. There's going to be an additional 4. So you're going to see this a number of times. And it's fairly straightforward. The money has been approved, but it's just necessary to go through the process to make sure that we have the proper easements to do the work that's needed to be done on this. With that, I will turn it over to Dylan Brady, who's given a lot of excellent legal help, and to the council if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, Ken. I really don't have any presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And so from council, we have question time, and then we'll have a comment time after the public comment. So let's start with Councilmember Cater Thompson.
Well, when Ken was saying that this is just the beginning, so there's other access points that are problematic on streets on McDowell. So you'll be coming back with us with other areas on McDowell? Is that what you meant?
Correct.
For easements?
Council member Cater Thompson, I will be coming back with 4 additional properties, and then these 4 have to come back for a second reading.
Okay, I'm just curious why we're not doing them all at once.
Acquiring, working with property owners, and we have notified them up to 6 times. One property owner has been completely radio silent, and I've gone to other developers, and he turns out that he is overseas in South Korea, and we're working on communicating with him and getting the needed access. Another property we are, discussing the acquisition of it, and that's something that the city attorney's office is actively working on. It's been back and forth a number of times.
Ken, that's perfect. I appreciate your response. I understand.
Councilmember Healy.
I just would like to know when we're going to see construction started out there.
I love that question. It's started. We are actively working on it and starting from the outside in, and this effort here is not going to delay that construction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's open the public comments and ask. I'm sorry, I missed Councilmember Shribs.
Just back to the acquisition. So understandably, it can be difficult at times, but as a last resort, are we allowed to use eminent domain to garner these particular easements? And being easements, they're still only easements and not actual property ownerships. So those are the 2 questions I would have on that.
Dylan, do you want to start, or do you want me to take a shot at it?
I can answer the eminent domain question. As a public entity, that's an option. It would probably be a more timely and definitely costly option. So Ken and our acquisition team, we're going to try to work as hard as we can to track people down all the way to South Korea before we go that route and give that option to you.
And with regard to the easements, so there's utility easements, there's site access easements, there's emergency access easements. All we want to do here is just get the proper easement that allows for the placement of surface improvements, i.e. the sidewalk. And that's the most cost-effective and typical way that this is handled, Councilmember Shribs.
Yeah, that just brings up the cost. If many times I've taken actions and asked forgiveness. So in that case, being that these are tiny little pieces of properties for easements, is there a way? I know it's probably not proper to do, but what type of trouble would we get into legally if we went ahead and did the work before getting the actual easements all signed?
Yeah, probably not a good recommendation on trespass, condemnation, clouding title. So probably not something that staff or at least our office would recommend.
Good. I just want to make clear why we don't do that.
No, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, to Councilmember Healy.
You might want to talk about the quick take option under eminent domain if we have to go there.
That's an option. I have never done the eminent domain process myself, but I'm sure Eric has and is familiar with it. So any eminent domain questions, we can definitely find an answer for you. Or maybe even Councilmember Healy knows what that process
No,
is.
it's come up in the past, but there's a way, it's called the quick take provision under eminent domain, and we can basically grab it and litigate later. If it comes to that.
nice to have options. Okay, so opening the public comment period, and let's see, do we have anything in on the books?
Mayor McDonald, no comments were received on this item prior to the meeting.
And I have no cards, and let's see how we are in the Zoom audience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on this item, please raise their virtual hand or hit *9. And we do not have any public commenters.
Thank you very much. Back to council for any comments or motion on the item. Councilmember Healy, that's a motion, and Councilmember Cater Thompson, that's a second. Thank you very much. And may we have the roll call vote?
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And now moving to item 8, and this is an item on the sunset of ordinance 2823, NCS adding chapter 6.0 to the Petaluma Municipal Code titled Residential Tenancy Protections until July 1, 2023, and finding this item is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15387B5. And at this point, I am recusing myself from this discussions and from reasons mentioned in first reading and other tenant protection items. And I will be introducing our Vice Mayor, Councilmember Cater Thompson, to carry this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've already commented on the item, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it to the city attorney.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Council. My name is Dylan Brady, Assistant City Attorney. I'm here tonight for the adoption and second reading of an ordinance. The first reading was 2 Mondays ago. This ordinance will extend the sunset date of Chapter 6.60, which is our tenant protection ordinance, from the March 1st sunset date to July 1. And the key there is it will provide the city staff more the ability to go out and get more research, as well as conduct stakeholder meetings. So Kendall, next slide, please. So here is our proposed outreach schedule. We have a couple meetings on the books this week with PPSC, tenant groups, as well as property managers. Staff have been working on what those presentations, what questions we're going to be looking for. And then we do have the 2 workshops. One will be virtual. The other one will be in person at Petaluma Community Service Center, and that's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Both of those meetings will be in Spanish. Then we will roll out a survey to really try to get down to what provisions people like, which ones are too burdensome, which provisions should we keep and add. That survey will also be in Spanish. We are finalizing the survey questions now. And then we will bring that back to City Council to do a workshop with that data. And Councilmember Shribs 2 weeks ago, you mentioned take a look at other city ordinances, and we always do that. We don't try to reinvent the wheel. But I did dust off, and I found all of the old city ordinances that we did take a look at when we initially drafted the ordinance. Emeryville, Marin County, Santa Ana, Richmond, Alameda County just had one. And what we're going to try to do is create a chart that shows the specific provisions in where Petaluma's ordinance, how it compares to the state law and every other city's jurisdiction. So with the community outreach, the survey results, and just the comparison chart, we hope to present that to you, and that should be some pretty good data for you to make your recommendations for any amendments. And then we will come back March 20th for the first reading and hopefully a second reading on April 3rd. And then I do really want to highlight this website here, tenantprotections@citypetaluma.org, as well as our website. It's on the city hall webpage, or you can just Google Petaluma tenants ordinance, and it'll be the first page that comes up. But that's how to ask questions, keep informed of where we are, get on our mailing list, so we will be able to email you that survey when it is produced. And then our communication staff has done a great job. We've been in several meetings with them to really get this information out and get these surveys information to the most people that we can. And then that's really my presentation, and happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much. Does any council members have any questions? Councilmember Shribs.
Yeah, the only, not much of a question, but more of a request.
Sure.
Because when we've heard the debates and arguments from both sides, tenants and landlords in the past, we've heard lots of stories and lots of ideas and positions. But what we did not get, and what has been requested, is data. Should we make a data-driven decision on this? So we had comments that, we don't have enough evictions to worry about. Why are we doing this? Whereas other stories, we're having a large amount that's undocumented and the like. So passing this severe of an ordinance and a change in what we're doing with the two sides as they are. So I would request that in the workshops that we make sure that we collect real data as well as maybe the stories of people. So a little more clearer picture on the volume of what we're really talking about. Are we talking about 1 to 10 per year? Or are we talking about that there's 50 to 100 folks that are very concerned that are changing, life-changing? So
Yeah.
where are we on this spectrum? And that's not clear to me yet as to, as was said, data-driven decision rather than an emotional-driven decision, please.
Understood. And really, we hope to get that data from the stakeholders groups, PPSC, legal aid, as well as the property managers. And I didn't mention, but we hope to reach out to Marin County, Emeryville, and other cities and jurisdictions to see how their ordinance has impacted them and any negative or positive externalities from them. So we'll come back with all of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other council members? We're going to go ahead and move on to the public comment. The public is invited to make comments on this item. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. And has the city clerk received any comments?
Madam Vice Mayor, no comments were submitted on this item prior to the meeting.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public comment, and Chad Bola.
Hello, council members. My name is Chad Bola, and I am a renter and a tenant organizer with the Sonoma County Tenants Union and the North Bay Organizing Project. I want to thank you all for committing to extend the sunset date of the ordinance, but I want to ask that you vote tonight to adopt that extension. We hope that the city will seek community input in a way that is meaningful, equitable, and accessible by all, as well as consider that there exist different levels of vulnerability amongst the stakeholders. One displaced family is too many. Ensuring that public have adequate advance notice of the community meetings is critical. So I want to thank you for your work on this important issue.
Thank you very much. Diana Kingsbury.
Good evening, City Council members and staff. My name is Diana Kingsbury, and I'm a renter and an organizer with North Bay Organizing Project and the Sonoma County Tenants Union. I'm here to commend the council for extending the sunset date for just cause eviction. I recently spoke with a tenant about this ordinance. This tenant shared how their friend, a fellow Petaluma tenant and mother of young children, will be affected by the extension. This tenant, has a landlord who wants to evict them to place their home on the market. Thanks to the new July 1st sunset date, this tenant can breathe a sigh of relief that her children can stay going to the same school at least until the end of the school year, and can at least delay having to undergo the damaging and long-lasting stress of eviction. Thank you for giving this tenant and her children this stability, even if only temporarily. As I shared in the last meeting, according to a longitudinal study of over 2,500 children published in 2020 by Lifehut et al., evicted children versus not had over twice the prevalence of food insecurity at age 5. The study also stated that interventions to prevent eviction can protect children from hunger and adversity. Thank you for making a wise, scientifically informed policy to protect children and families in our community. Also, thank you for helping protect against homelessness in our community. Flaming et al. Of the Economic Roundtable found the following in their analysis comparing projected versus actual growth of homelessness in Los Angeles County from 2020 to 2022. Eviction moratoriums appear to have been the most effective intervention in preventing housing displacement and homelessness. They, quote, reduced the number of evictions nationwide by half and provided even stronger protections in California and Los Angeles. Again, thank you for taking this research into account. Finally, with regards to the community workshops coming up, I want to ask you to consider this. Last week, I spoke with a tenant who's afraid of giving their full name while giving public comment because they fear that in the future, if they're looking for an apartment, landlords may discriminate against them. For example, the landlord could search their name online when reviewing their rental application and judge them a bad tenant for participating in such a community workshop as a renter or for expressing support for just cause protections. This tenant could face, and any tenant could face this discrimination, keeping them from securing a place to live without ever even knowing it. This is not to mention all the other risks tenants face of retaliation in many forms anytime they stand up for themselves or their neighbors, such as landlords taking a very long time to make repairs, if ever at all, finding creative reasons to withhold their deposit if they ever have to move, and on, things we as renters have experienced ourselves and that we hear about all the time from the renters we meet. This is not an equal starting point for the conversation. For every tenant who shows up in support of just cause, consider the risks they face in doing so, risks not shared by other stakeholders. Thank you for keeping this in mind.
Thank you very much. Page D.
Good evening. Thank you so much, council members and staff, for the urgency with which you are addressing this really important community need at the beginning of this calendar year. And for committing to extend the sunset date of the current ordinance. While I would hope that we would consider removing the sunset date entirely if the council does believe that there must be one, then I appreciate that the proposed date at least brings us past the close of this current school year. This would have a direct positive impact on some of my youngest loved ones that are also renters here in Petaluma. So with deep appreciation, I ask that you vote tonight to adopt this extension, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to Aaron, our moderator, to read instructions for those on Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Members of the public attending virtually should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. The first speaker that we have is ZG. ZG, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thanks so much. Again, this is Zaira. I want to first say I really appreciate Councilmember Now making those connections in SAC with Black leaders. With that said, I want to put a plug for all of you and hope to continue and build on those connections and relationships with our local Sonoma County NAACP, which supported this ordinance as well. And we talk a lot about data, and just kind of wanted to remind folks, and you can watch this back in March 14th of 2022. They gave a workshop in some sense, that featured panelist of housing research analysts. So hoping that we can extend that invitation for workshops as well, but also on your own time to do so. And also, as a renter in District 2, I'm looking forward to these workshops. So 2 things to note, though. At the last council meeting, I said that home ownership was a privilege. So when it comes to equity, I would like to see home ownership be broken down by demographics. I know council wants more data, but even just by viewing from last meeting's public comment, we saw majority of them were white homeowners. And that's not to be divisive, that's just facts. Another thing that the mobile home situation, as you all know, Santa Rosa voted to update and restrict how much mobile home park owners can raise rent each year. But there seemed to be some confusion with that, which was that it wouldn't apply to the tenants this year. Rent increases scheduled for January 1st would be subject to law. And that's because the ordinance did not go into effect until January 6th, which was 30 days after city council's vote. So as quoted in the Press Democrat, only increases that begin on or after January 6th of 2023 are required to apply the new percentage. So I just want to make sure that Petaluma doesn't drop the ball on that aspect when it comes to the mobile homes. Thanks so much and have a great night.
The next speaker that we have is Sonoma County Tenants Union. Sonoma County Tenants Union, I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hey there. It looks like my name should have been changed. I'm so sorry about that. I'm Michael Tatone. I am a board member of the Sonoma County Tenants Union. And I just wanted to say that I support extending the sunset date to June 1st or later so that we can get some feedback from the community and, continue and move forward with this ordinance. I think it's extremely powerful, and knowing the limitations on the existing state law, not just in terms of who it applies to, but in terms of relocation benefits and any kinds of protections that really just aren't there, that actually exist with this ordinance. I think this is really important. But most importantly, I really think that we just need to, hear from the community, keep going as planned. And I'm really grateful that that we've made it this far, and looking forward to continuing discussions and workshops. Thank you.
The next speaker that I have is Maddie Hirschfield. Maddie, I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Maddie Hirschfield, I'm the political director with the North Bay Labor Council, and we've been working with several cities on these rent control and just cause eviction notices. I do appreciate that you have taken this issue very seriously and taken time to study it and learn the data. There's a lot going on down in Marin County, excuse me, now around this issue as well. And it's so important because, we've all heard housing is a right. But we're struggling. We're still struggling from the pandemic. The North Bay Labor Council is concerned with low-wage workers, and housing obviously is probably the biggest cost. So to displace a family or a worker is bad for the whole community. So again, I really appreciate, and the Labor Council really appreciates you doing this. We fully support your extending the sunset and hope that you all vote to do that this evening. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker that we have is Margaret. Margaret, I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening, City Council and staff. Thanks for this opportunity to speak. Margaret DiMatteo, Housing Policy Attorney with Legal Aid of Sonoma County. And thanks to Dylan Brady for the presentation. I second all the comments I heard tonight. I even was compelled by the comments of the construction workers that were speaking on an earlier item, just about hiring locally and 4-hour commutes and then being displaced from their families. And I'm not saying that necessarily links up in those specific instances, but this ordinance is something that's going to keep communities intact and prevent, lower wage earners and our construction workers, our firefighters, our police force from having to live elsewhere because they cannot live in Petaluma because they were evicted for arbitrary or no reason at all. And they couldn't afford to find a place to live here following an eviction, which is such a common story at Legal Aid. You know, we represent tenants who end up getting evicted and leave Sonoma County, period. So I just want you to keep that in mind, how powerful that is, you know, that this is no small thing. And when you're thinking about data, do we have enough data? Also think about the fact that this is the 30th just cause ordinance enacted in California. The information Dylan mentioned for Councilmember Shribs, the table of ordinances, I've already done that research and I'm happy to share it because I wanted to find out if this ordinance was similar, or was it out of the blue that we decided to include single family homes or exclude subsidized housing. And what I found is that this ordinance is consistent with over 50% of the ordinances in California. So, and you know, you'll see that, you know, but you have to want to see it. And the information is there. And as a stakeholder, I'm just one person. I don't have a researcher. I don't have an assistant. If I did, I would use that time with that person to constantly look for data to provide with, you know, elected officials. But we do have some numbers that we're going to present at the stakeholder meeting on evictions in Petaluma, starting back in 2017 up until the end of the year. And we're also working with United Way Bay Area to track what the calls were regarding, because nationwide and Bay Area wide, the number one call was regarding housing. So I'm happy to share that and provide technical assistance as needed. Thank you for your time.
And Madam Vice Mayor, that is the last public commenter. I do want to note that Councilmember Barnacle has his hand raised.
I saw that. Thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and close the public comment, and we're going to bring it back to the council and Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, I'll start. I'll make a motion to move this item. One piece of research that I'd love to see that I don't feel like should be too hard for staff in this process or the advocates that are in the audience is to just look at the available rentals. Councilmember Shribs, you mentioned that it's really hard to move into anything under $2,000. I'll vouch for that. And I'd like to just look at move-in terms and then correlate those to costs. Because while there's certain parts of this ordinance that I feel are certainly flawed, one of the areas where I don't think, or I'm concerned we haven't gone far enough is on the payment for no-fault evictions. If someone had some car maintenance and was, you know, had some things come up and then they got a notice to vacate, there's a good chance that 1 month is not going to be enough to get them into a new house. And not enough to get into a new house means that they're out on the street or somewhere else living in their car, what have you. So I want to make sure that for those no-fault evictions, probably my biggest priority is making sure that if someone's going to be removed from their house for no fault of their own, that at the very least they are able to land on their feet in a new house. Because I feel like that's really what's at the heart of this ordinance. So I'd like to see that research because I think what the homeowners on this city council will find is that it's pretty astonishing how much it costs to actually move into a place. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Barnacle. Councilmember Posake?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Councilmember Posake, can you please speak closer to the microphone? Thank you.
I'm seconding the motion, and I want to add the comment that I don't know that there's a number above zero that's too small to go ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other council members? Shribs?
The only thing I probably should mention is that my mother and her family were evicted. It was back in the 1930s, the Depression age. But when that happened and they were thrown out on the street by police, and given less than 24 hours notice at that time, that had left a mark on her for the rest of her life that I heard about for the rest of her life. And it actually changed a lot of the things that she did in the future. She really got into real estate from that point on forward to try to understand it. So evictions are extremely a personal thing for me, as well as if you're here in Petaluma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if there's no more council comment, we'll go ahead and call the roll call.
And Vice Mayor, can I say something too?
Please.
Margaret, if you're still out there, I can see it. We'd be happy to take your charts and our comparisons, and that'd be great. And I will say to one of the public comments about retaliation, our ordinance does have a specific retaliation section. So it is a defense currently for evictions if you can prove in an unlawful detainer that you are being evicted for you using and exercising your rights under the ordinance. Rest assured that in our survey question, we don't ask what the tenants or the property owners' names are. And would be a violation of the Brown Act, even though that's not going to be a Brown Act meeting, to require as part of any public participation to say who your name is. So I'll just add that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. City Clerk?
Thank
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor. I just want to comment on something. I appreciate that, Dylan. So the one thing I'll say is that it's not, the legal recourse may be there for someone if they have retaliation, but the impact of fear is what might force people to not show up. And I think that's what people are speaking to, and that's the power imbalance that is ever present in a tenant-landlord situation and in so many situations. But I want to make sure that, you know, in a city that's really trying to up its game on diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we're really cognizant about not just, you know, what the law states, but what the impact of this situation is. So thank you. I know you didn't mean anything by that.
No, yeah, point taken, council member. I will do our best to work with our communications staff and really, I think, try to push out that tenantprotection.org email address so people can send in their comments anonymously and answer the survey. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk?
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
No.
Now,
Yes.
No.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes, 5-1. Healy voting no and McDonald recused.
No, I voted no as well.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Let me correct that. I have Barnacle, yes. Cater Thompson, yes. Healy, no. McDonald recused. Karen Now, no. Posake, yes. Shribs, yes. Motion passes 4-2 with Healy and Now voting no and McDonald recused. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much. Now, can somebody get our mayor back? And here he comes.
And item 9. And that's the resolution appointing individuals to fill vacancies on city committees and commissions, and finding that this item is not a project pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15378B5. Let's see.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be presenting this item.
Thank you.
Before presenting the PowerPoint presentation, I'll just give a brief overview. We generally have our committee and commission recruitment every spring. We open the application period for community members to apply to sit on committees and commissions, and council makes appointments to begin on July 1st for all of the terms. Unfortunately, we have a few vacancies across committees and commissions due to resignations before terms have expired, and also from our newly elected council members having to vacate their commission and committee appointments in order to serve on the council. So just a reminder to the community, sitting on committees and commissions is a great way to get involved in local government. The item tonight, we have vacancies on the Measure U Oversight Committee, the Tree Advisory Committee, and the Youth Commission. We also have a vacancy on the Transit Advisory Committee. We've had this application period open for a few weeks for those who were just newly seated, but some of these positions, such as the Youth Commission, have been vacant and advertised since about September of last year. So we're really looking for the community to come out and get engaged. The information on how to apply is on the city's website, and we will continue to solicit applications to fill those vacancies. Before you tonight, after public comment, will pull up the names of the applicants who have, or the people who have applied for these vacancies, and we will take a vote to see if you would like to appoint them. We received the same number of applications as available seats for the Measure U Oversight Committee, Tree Advisory Committee, and Youth Commission. With that, I'm going to pause and ask Mayor if you'd like to go to public comment before we vote.
That is what we'd like to do. And do we have any feedback online prior to meeting?
No comments were received prior to the meeting.
And no comment cards in the council, and so let's check online with the Zoom audience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, if anyone would like to speak on this item from the virtual realm, can you please raise your hand or hit *9? And we do not have any public commenters.
Thank you very much. And bringing it back, I did have a question. Looking at the staff report, it lists Measure U as 2 regular members to fill and lists 3 candidates.
Thank you for the clarification. It was brought to my attention today. There is a 3rd vacancy. We received a letter of resignation from a 3rd member a few weeks ago.
Okay. Thank you. And so how will our voting process?
I'm going to share my screen if you could bear with me for just a moment. I have up here first the Measure U Oversight Committee. There, as we mentioned, there are 3 regular member seats. The terms are staggered. There is 1 seat open for a term expiring June 30th of 2023 and 2 terms expiring June 30th, 2025. Although there are only 3 applicants for 3 seats, you do not need to vote for all 3. You can vote for less. So I am going to go down the roll call and ask your vote. Up to 3 people you can vote for. And if you can indicate which person you would suggest the 2023 term for, the shortest term. And I will track this and see if there is consensus at the end, and if not, we will go through additional rounds of voting. And I see there is a question before we begin.
Councilmember Now.
Only because it would be hard to determine who to take that short term. Who was the last person to drop off their application or make their application?
These are listed in the order received. So Carrie Davison was the first application received, and Susan Kirks was the last application received.
Okay, so that would be, Mr. Mayor, how I would do it is by the person who was the first and second get the longest, and then the third. That's just my opinion, but she can always reapply, correct?
She could. This position expires June 30th, 2023. So again, applications will be opening in the spring for appointments to be made for a new term that would begin July 1st, 2023. And I'll just note that, Mayor, you can discuss this with the council. It is up to your discretion how you appoint.
Right. Thank you for that input, and I'm sure each of us has considered the various different ways of selecting and whether, in fact, we have 3 candidates or not. So, I mean, many options exist for us
If you prefer, we could do a first round of voting just to see who the top candidates are, and then we could go through a second round.
I am comfortable proceeding in our alphabetical voting roles, and and letting it find out where we are at that point.
Okay. So if everybody understood that, Councilmember Barnacle, we'll start with you. If you could please indicate your up to 3 choices and who would have the 2023 term.
Davidson, Sturm, and Kirks, and Sturm would have the 2023.
Cater Thompson? Sorry, is your microphone on? Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Carrie Davidson, 2025, Stern, 23, and Susan Kirk's 25.
Healy?
I'm going to vote for Kerry Davison and Tyler Sturm and not cast a third vote.
Okay. Mayor McDonald?
And I would also vote for Kerry Davidson and Tyler Stern and no third vote.
Okay. Councilmember Now?
And I would like to do it the same way with Kerry Davison, Sturm, and then Kirk's.
Kirk's with the shorter term?
Correct.
Councilmember Posake?
I vote for all 3 and with Stern having the short term.
Councilmember Shribs?
Okay, I'll go for all 3, but I don't have a preference on, I'll let the others votes take the precedence on who gets the shorter term.
Okay, I will ask a city attorney to help verify this with me, but I see the majority vote for all 3 members to be appointed, and there are 3 votes for Tyler Sturm to get the shorter term of 2023. Are we all in agreement on that? Okay. The next body is for the Tree Advisory Committee.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes.
I think you should go through the council to see who we want, because we all didn't weigh in on that. So I think you should do a roll call on who gets the short term.
I can do that. Barnacle, can you please confirm for the shorter term?
Sturm.
Cater Thompson?
Tyler Stern.
Okay. Healy?
Susan Kirk's.
McDonald?
Susan Kirk's is the short term.
Now?
Susan Kirk's is a third.
Posake? And Shribs?
Can't decide, so I'll say no vote.
That's not going to work.
You'll have
you
to
were
vote, I
elected.
believe.
You might be the tiebreaker.
Okay, I'll go for the short term. I'll put Susan Kirk's on there.
Okay. So I will revise. All 3 will be appointed. Susan Kirk's had the majority vote for the short term, so she will be appointed to the term that expires in 2023. And again, as Councilmember Now noted, she does have the option to reapply if she chooses. The next committee, the Tree Advisory Committee, 1 applicant applied, so it's just a yes or no. Are you in favor of appointing this applicant? Councilmember Barnacle?
Yes.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
Taryn Obaid will be appointed to the Tree Advisory Committee. And again, with the Youth Commission, we had 1 youth applicant, Julia Boren, and we'll go through it if you could just confirm if you would like to appoint this individual. Councilmember Barnacle?
Yes, I would.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
All right, so Julia will be appointed to the Youth Commission. And then if I can ask the council to make a motion for a resolution appointing all the members as voted on.
I'll make that resolution.
So-
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Apologize, switching my screen. Barnacle?
Yes.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Posake? Shribs?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And now moving to item 10, a resolution recommending appointments to the Mayors and Council Members Association to fill vacancies on regional bodies, and finding this item is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15387 B5. And back to you.
This is
City
my
Clerk.
item again, and it's going to be very similar. This is for regional appointments to the Mayors and Council Members Association. This is what we do annually, every January. There may also be other opportunities throughout the year as vacancies arise. These appointments, you are recommending to the Mayors and Council Members Association who the mayor should vote for in your resolution of support for the meeting that will occur on February 9th for these appointments to be made. With that, if you want to open public comment and any questions of the council, I'm here.
Any questions on the council? Good. Then public comment is now open. Have we received any previous?
We have not received any comments on this prior to the meeting.
And no cards, obviously. And how about our Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on item 10, please raise your virtual hand or press *9. It does not look like we have any public commenters.
Thank you very much. Public comment closed. And let's go back into that voting procedure.
All right, sharing my screen once again. So I broke this out similarly to the last item. There were only 2 bodies that we received more applications than seats available, so we'll go through the voting sequence on those 2 first. The first being the Local Agency Formation Commission, known as LAFCO. There are 2 regular seats and 1 alternate. So if I was going to suggest if we vote for all 3 and see if there's 3 people and then vote for the alternate to see who gets the alternate seat. So if we can just go through the roll call first, just vote for the 3 people who you would like to nominate or appoint. Does that work?
You know, if I may, at this point in the evening, I'd love to do the easy stuff first and come back to the hard stuff.
Okay.
Can we just validate each of the ones that just has one candidate?
Yes,
for
so
one
that's
spot?
this slide here. These 2 bodies, no letters of interest were received for. We can come back to that. Maybe that's not even the easiest. These 4 bodies, the letters of interest are equivalent to the number of seats. So for Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board, known as BACMed, Brian Barnacle submitted a letter of interest. For Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG, Zolman from Sebastopol, North Bay Division of the League of California Cities Executive Board, Elward from Rohnert Park, and Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Commission, Bagby and Rogers from Cloverdale and Santa Rosa. Those were the individuals who submitted letters of interest that are equivalent to the number of seats available. And in the spirit of the hour, if you're want to just
Let's just take 1 second and check across council. Councilmember Healy?
Thank you. So I think we can probably do this in one motion, but I wanted to point out that with respect to the North Bay Division League of California Cities Executive Board, Nancy Hall Bennett has confirmed there are actually 3 vacancies, and somehow there's been a disconnect between whoever's staffing mayors and council these days and what came down to the cities. So I would support doing this, but if there's anyone on this council that's interested in one of the other seats, I would ask them to put their name forward, and Mayor McDonald, you can put that name forward at the mayor and council members meeting next month.
If I may, can I respond to that?
Please.
This was brought to my attention this afternoon from the mayor, and so I did reach out to the chair city in Healdsburg and confirm there are 2 additional vacancies on the North Bay Division League of California Cities. The email soliciting letters of interest for those seats will be coming out after the February 9th meeting for appointments to be made at the March meeting for those seats, the March meeting of the Mayors and Council Members Association.
So then the plan would be to stay with the program as programmed. And Councilmember Posake?
Thank you. I'll make a motion.
Okay. And Councilmember Cater Thompson, do you have a comment? Did I see the hand?
No,
No?
I'm just going to wait
Oh.
until March and see what happens with the North Bay Division.
Can you help me out here? The Sonoma County Oversight Board, I thought I saw that Zolman had an application in.
He did submit a letter of interest for more than one board. The other one was the LAFCO position.
And a 4th one. He's in for the ABAG one, he's in for the childcare one, and he's in for oversight, all uncontested. And so that should influence whether we select him or not in when there's competitive voting for a certain position. So can we get back on track here? After comments, we're back to the polling.
Yes, I'm trying to pull it up. Zolman submitted letter of interest for LAFCO, ABAG, and Child Care Planning Council of Sonoma County. And I'm not sure I caught the question there.
I think he also applied for the oversight board, but because he had 2 letters with 2 applications in them each, making it very tricky.
I don't have that included in the staff report, so that's
but
why I'm
I'm-
trying to look.
I'm willing to run with the way you have it, just noting that he has 2 seats that are uncontested already, so the ABAG one and the child care one, which the child care one doesn't show on this particular slide. Please.
Can I amend my motion to include childcare on this motion?
And the seconder, amended and seconded.
Okay.
And I apologize, with the second from Posake?
Posake.
Thank you. Okay, and we want to take a vote on those first before we discuss the other boards?
These 4 plus
Plus the
1,
childcare.
5. Yes, let's do that.
Okay. Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. There were no letters of interest received for these 2 bodies, the Sonoma County Oversight Board and the RAN Board, the Remote Access Network. I'm trying to confirm, because I hear you saying that Zolman submitted a letter of interest for the Sonoma County Oversight Board, and I don't have that in my records from the chair city.
Then I will remove that from concern for this evening.
Okay. Then do you have preference whether we go through the Sonoma County Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District Citizens Advisory Committee? Would you prefer to do this one over LAFCO first?
This is fine.
Okay. There's 1 regular seat, and there are 2 people who submitted letters of interest, Lands from Cloverdale and Stapp from Santa Rosa. Barnacle, can you please indicate your vote?
Stapp.
Cater Thompson,
Stapp.
Healy,
Mark Stapp.
McDonald,
Staff.
Now,
Staff.
Posake,
Stapp.
Shribs. All right, we'll
Yeah.
put staff into the resolution for that one, 7-0 for staff. And then the final board is the Local Agency Formation Commission. There's 2 regular seats and 1 alternate, so 3 total seats, and 4 individuals submitted letters of interest. I was going to suggest that we take a vote for all 3 during this first round of voting to see if we have 3 who come out ahead. Barnacle,
I mean, I realize we're just voting right now. I'm just gonna talk, I guess I'm gonna leave Zolman off, even though I think that Sebastopol has a unique reason to be on LAFCO, but with him being on others, I just honestly worry that he's about bandwidth. So I'm gonna say Lowe, Harvey, and Alrecki.
Cater Thompson,
And I will say the same, Low, Harvey, and Jeff.
Krepke. Healy,
I'm going to vote for Harvey and Okrepke and not cast a third vote.
okay. McDonald,
Lowe, Harvey, and Okrepke.
Now,
Lowe, Harvey, and then the alternate would be.
we're just going to do 3
Oh,
for
okay.
now, and then if we have
Okay,
consensus,
then
we'll do alternate.
Jeff. I
Okay.
can't say his last name.
Okrepke. Posake,
Low, Harvey, and Okrepke.
Shribs?
Let's make it unanimous. Same three, Lowe, Harvey, Okrepke.
Okay, there's majority support for the three of them, so we'll do one more round of voting. If you can indicate who you would recommend for the alternate seat, please. Barnacle?
Can I ask a question? Councilmember Healy, is there a reason why you feel Harvey and Okrepke are better suited? I really don't have a horse in this race. I'm just wondering, looking for some guidance on this.
No, I was just wanting to make sure that Susan and Jeff got it.
Got you. Okay. All right. Well, then I will vote for Lowe, and I will vote for Okrepke. Actually, I'll vote for Lowe and Harvey.
So we're just doing who you would suggest as the alternate. So if you're saying Lowe and Harvey, are you saying Okrepke is the alternate?
Yes.
Okay. Cater Thompson?
I will go with Lowe and Harvey also, and then, just Okrepke is the alternate.
Thank you. Healy?
Lowe is the alternate.
McDonald?
Lowe is the alternate.
Now?
How do you say Jeff's last name?
Okrepke?
Okrepke as the alternate.
Posake?
Low, alternate.
And Councilmember Shribs, it comes down to you once again.
Okrepke would be the alternate because his application wasn't even, there was almost nothing on it. So
Right.
there was no information, zero, so I can't support him in any way.
Okay, well, there's unanimous support for Lowe, Harvey, and Okrepke, with Okrepke recommended to be the alternate. I will fill all of these names in as voted on the resolution. If we can get one more motion for the
Right.
resolution as voted on.
Here we have a motion. And that motion is from Cater Thompson
Second.
and Shribs with the second. And a roll call vote.
Just a moment, I started switching screens here. Okay, Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Oh, by
Thank
the way,
you for bearing with me.
does other cities get to vote on the same folks?
Let's adjourn the meeting and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that concludes tonight's business, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.